Welcome to Bite-Sized Exclusive Podcast.
Great to be here.
So today we're digging into some really interesting points from Dr. William von Hippel, the evolutionary psychologist.
Oh, yeah, his appearance on the Diary of a CEO was fascinating.
Totally. And we wanted to pull out some exclusive takeaways, things our listeners can maybe chew on quickly, maybe even apply.
Good idea. He really gets into the why behind what we do, looking back at our evolution to understand, well, happiness and choices now.
Exactly. So let's jump in. He started with something pretty fundamental, didn't he? This idea of autonomy versus connection.
That's the one. It's a core tension he highlights. And he argues that, especially for folks in, Western, wealthy, urban, educated circles.
Well, many of our listeners probably.
Right. The tendency is maybe to overvalue autonomy, doing what you want right now.
Which sounds great, doesn't it? Freedom, control.
Sure, on the surface.
Yeah.
But his point is this might be pushing out connection, those social bonds. And that actually hurts our happiness overall.
Okay, so less connection equals less happy. How does he back that up?
Well, he uses some pretty striking examples. Think about neighbors. He said it used to be like 1 in 3 people hung out with their neighbors regularly.
Okay.
Now, it's closer to 1 in 5. And get this, about a third now say they rarely or never even see their neighbors. That's a big shift.
Wow, yeah. That's quite different from how maybe our parents or grandparents lived.
Definitely. And it's not just neighbors. Living alone is way more common now, too.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 1850s, maybe 1% of Americans lived solo.
1%. Tiny.
Yeah. Now it's, like 1 in 7 people. So we're much more isolated, physically at least.
Huh. So how does that compare to other ways of living?
He contrasts it with groups like the Hadza, the hunter-gatherers in Tanzania. They face, real challenges, material scarcity.
Right, tough lives in many ways.
But their happiness levels, through the roof. Over 90% reported being happy in the last week when surveyed.
90% compared to, what's the figure for Westerners? Around half.
Yeah, roughly 50%, a massive gap. And he connects it directly to their interdependence. They have to rely on each other. Connection isn't optional, it's survival.
So the implication is, we think we want all this autonomy, but maybe we're actually wired for and happier with more connection.
That seems to be his argument.
Yeah.
Have we maybe pushed the pendulum too far? Even small things, like he mentioned couples choosing to exercise separately instead of together. Little bits of autonomy chipping away at shared time.
Okay, that makes sense. It connects to that whole wealth and happiness thing too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The Easterlin paradox. You know the one.
Right, where richer people tend to say they're happier.
Yeah, and apparently that holds true even at really high incomes, like over $600,000 a year. People still report being happier with more money moment to moment.
Okay.
But when you zoom out and look at the whole society, as countries get richer over time, the average happiness level doesn't really budge.
Like the U.S. since the 40s. Much wealthier now, but not necessarily happier overall.
Exactly. So why? Von Hippel suggests money is partly, maybe largely, a status game.
Ah, keeping up with the Joneses.
Kind of. It's about relative standing. And in a huge, globalized world, it's just harder to feel like you're winning compared to, say, being the big fish in a smaller historical pond.
There's always someone richer on Instagram, right?
Pretty much. And here's another interesting bit. His sources suggest poorer individuals often report stronger social connections, like better friendships.
Really? Why would that be?
Maybe out of necessity. You rely on each other more when resources are tight, whereas for wealthier folks, maybe things like religious participation become more important for finding that social connection.
So money buys comfort, sure, but not guaranteed happiness. And it might even isolate you a bit if you're not careful about maintaining connections.
That seems to be the idea. It's a paradox, like you said.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. He talked a lot about attraction, obviously, given the psychologist angle in the original source, from an evolutionary perspective.
Right. So for men attracting women, he focuses on honest signals of quality, things you can't easily fake.
Like what?
Things like risk-taking, not foolish risk, but stuff that shows skill or, robustness.
Yeah.
Being able to handle challenges,
right.
Physical size, historically, also earned wealth and ambition signals you can provide resources. And humor.
Humor, really?
Yeah, apparently it signals an agile mind, maybe good genes, intelligence. It's hard to fake being genuinely witty.
Huh. Interesting. What about just being Nice.
Ah, yes, kindness. He says that's crucial. While the other things might grab attention, kindness signals you'll be a good partner, someone who will look out for them. So the nice guys finish first idea. May be true in the long run for partner selection.
Good to know. And for
Mm.
women attracting men, what are the evolutionary signals there?
The focus tends to be more on cues related to reproductive potential. So youth, health, signs of being well-fed historically, that meant having enough fat
And
reserves.
the hip to waist ratio thing, is that real?
Seems to be consistently linked to fertility preferences across cultures. It's pretty baked in.
It's wild how these ancient drives still shape us.
Well, think about it. Male fertility is generally lifelong, while female fertility is more time-limited and health-dependent. That difference shapes the strategies.
Right.
And it might explain why women show more, what do you call, sexual plasticity,
Meaning,
being able to find a wider range of men attractive, potentially weighing factors like provider potential or kindness more heavily, not just looks or status.
okay, got it. So our evolutionary wiring is still running the show in the background. How does modern life mess with all this? He mentioned pornography, right?
Yeah, he did. His sources suggest a correlation, more porn consumption among young singles might link to less actual sexual activity.
So it could be acting as a substitute for real connection and intimacy.
That's the concern some researchers have, yeah.
Yeah.
It's complex, but it's a potential factor in why some young people might be having less sex than previous generations.
And what about falling birth rates? Is that because people want sex less?
Not really, according to him. We evolved to want sex, plain and simple.
Right.
But modern contraception completely separates sex from making babies.
Right. We can have one without the other reliably now.
Exactly. And on top of that, raising kids in the modern world just feels incredibly demanding and expensive for many people. That's a huge factor.
He brought up robots too, didn't he, in relation to childcare? Seemed a bit sci-fi.
It did sound a bit out there, but his point, that may be provocative, was that if advanced robots could genuinely ease the massive burden of childcare,
Like handle the drudgery, the logistics.
right, then maybe that could remove a major barrier for people deciding whether to have kids. It's a thought experiment, but an interesting one about tackling practical challenges.
Definitely food for thought. What about marriage? Does getting married make you happier, evolutionarily speaking?
Well, the data is interesting. On average, just getting married doesn't automatically boost happiness levels. But people who don't get married might also be overvaluing autonomy in other parts of their life, which could lead to lower happiness overall. And happier people are just more likely to get married and stay married successfully.
So it's less that marriage causes happiness and more that happy, connected people are maybe more likely to marry and make it work.
That seems to be closer to what the data suggests, yeah. It's correlation, not necessarily causation from the act of marrying itself.
Okay, let's touch on neurodiversity. He had a really interesting evolutionary take on that.
He did. He proposed that neurodivergent thinking, different ways of processing the world, might have always been crucial for innovation.
How so?
Well, you think differently. Maybe you're less bound by social conformity, more likely to see novel solutions. These individuals could have been the inventors, the explorers, the ones pushing boundaries throughout history.
That's a great reframing. Not a deficit, but a different, potentially vital kind of thinking.
Exactly. And he also mused about ADHD, suggesting maybe it's more of a mismatch with our modern environment.
Like sitting still and focusing on boring tasks wasn't really a thing for hunter-gatherers.
Right. Their lives were active, varied, constantly engaging with the environment, demanding sustained focus on something uninteresting. That's a modern requirement that might be particularly challenging for someone with an ADHD-like profile.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about religion? How does that fit into the happiness picture?
Strong correlation there. People involved in religious communities tend to report higher happiness.
Is it the belief?
The community?
Both. Seems like both play a role. Even just prayer itself seems linked to higher happiness, maybe by providing meaning or comfort.
Mm-hmm.
But the social component, the regular gathering, the shared rituals, the community support, that seems really key, especially maybe for wealthier people who might lack other strong organic social networks. It loops back to connection.
Connection, again, it's the recurring theme. So does he offer an answer to the ultimate question, the meaning of life?
Yeah. Well, his take is pretty pragmatic. He suggests life might be inherently meaningless from a cosmic perspective.
Jerry. Well, wait. He doesn't stop there. He says the key isn't finding some external meaning, but making the best of it by doing what we evolved for, connecting with each other, being kind.
So the meaning is in the connection itself.
Sort of. And he adds that the pursuit of meaning, the act of searching and trying to live purposefully, can itself contribute to happiness.
Okay, that's a bit more hopeful. And this ties into how we spend our money too, right? Experiences versus stuff.
Yep, classic finding, but he reinforces it. Spending on experiences, travel, concerts, learning new skills, even meals out with friends tends to lead to more lasting happiness than buying material objects.
Why is that, do you think?
Could be, because experiences become part of who we are, our identity, our stories, and you can often share experiences with others, which again boosts connection. Stuff just stays stuff.
Right. You remember the trip long after the new gadget is obsolete. Okay, so he boiled some of this down, didn't he? Like 5 key things linked to happiness.
He did. A sort of practical list based on these evolutionary insights.
Let's run through them quickly.
Okay, first, prioritize family. And if family isn't close or supportive, build your own proxy family, close friends. Eat together, talk regularly.
Makes sense. Connection central. Number 2.
Sacrifice some autonomy for friends. Make the effort, show up, reciprocate.
Yeah.
Those bonds need tending, and sometimes that means doing something you wouldn't autonomously choose, but you do it for the relationship.
Okay. Give and take. 3rd.
Get a pet. Companionship, simple as that, fulfills some of that need for connection and care.
Good one. 4th.
Be present in idle conversation. Those little chats at the water cooler or waiting in line. They matter more for building connection than we often think. Don't just scroll on your phone.
Ooh, good reminder for all of us. And number 5.
Pursue lifestyle goals with others. Want to get fit? Join a class or a team. Want to learn something? Take a course with people. It boosts effectiveness and connection.
So all 5 really hammer home that connection point, but in practical ways.
Absolutely. It all comes back to balancing that drive for individual freedom with our fundamental, evolved need to belong and connect.
And his final thought was about actively managing that balance.
Yeah, basically be intentional about it. Look for ways to combine autonomy and connection. Set up routines for social stuff so it doesn't rely on moment-to-moment decisions.
Like a regular game night or weekly call.
Exactly. And watch out for miswanting, thinking you want more solitude or freedom, when deep down what you really crave and what will make you happier is more connection.
Being honest with ourselves about what truly matters for well-being.
That's the core message, I think.
Okay, fantastic. That was a really insightful look at some key ideas from Dr. von Hippel on, well, us, humans, and that delicate dance between wanting our own way and needing each other.
Hopefully it's given everyone listening some useful things to consider about their own lives and happiness.
Yeah, think about how these evolutionary ideas might play out for you day to day. What stood out? What questions pop up? Definitely worth mulling over.
Sure.
See you soon with another one.